Have you ever sat in a room full of people you love and felt utterly invisible? You might be at the dinner table. Your children are talking, maybe even laughing, but they don't look at you. They don't ask what you think. They move around you, like you're just part of the furniture. You've raised them, cared for them, sacrificed sleep, health, and dreams, and somehow, somewhere along the way, your voice became optional, background noise, at best, and still, you say nothing. Not because you don't feel it, but because you've learned that saying something rarely changes anything. You've spoken up before, gently, then firmly, then not at all. And each time, the response is either defensiveness or dismissal. So now, you've begun to wonder, maybe silence isn't weakness. Maybe silence is something else entirely, something powerful. After 60, silence becomes more than just the absence of words. It becomes a decision, a quiet line drawn not in anger, but in dignity. That's what we're here to talk about today. Those moments when you feel disrespected, unimportant, overlooked, and instead of reacting, you say nothing, not to punish, not to sulk, but because your silence carries a message. I no longer chase attention. I no longer explain my worth. I no longer beg to be treated right. Let me tell you about Madeline. She's 72 now, widowed, raised 3 children mostly on her own. She's always been the peacemaker in her family, the one who lets things go, keeps the group together, remembers birthdays, reaches out first. But something changed last Christmas. Her eldest daughter hosted the family. Madeline brought gifts for the grandkids, made her famous dessert, arrived early to help. And when dinner was served, they sat her at the far end of the table, away from the kids, away from the conversation. No one asked how she was. No one thanked her for coming. She wanted to say something. Her heart was tight with disappointment, but she didn't. She stayed quiet. The next morning, she didn't text to say thank you. She didn't call to say she had a nice time. She simply carried on with her day, quietly, peacefully, without reaching out. And something unexpected happened. 3 days later, her daughter called not to ask for help, but to apologize. Because for the first time, her mother's silence was louder than her words had ever been. There are times when silence is the only language they understand, not because they're cruel, but because they've become too used to your presence, too sure of your forgiveness, too comfortable with your constant giving. But when you say nothing, when you refuse to defend yourself, when you walk away, instead of explaining why you're hurt for the 100th time, they feel the absence. They feel the shift. They feel the quiet weight of your dignity. Lucas, a father of 2 grown sons, used to argue every time one of them spoke to him with sarcasm. He'd raise his voice, get emotional, try to make them see how much it hurt. But they never really listened. They called him sensitive, brushed it off. So one day, when his younger son made another offhand joke at his expense during a family barbecue, Lucas didn't respond. He just looked at him, then turned away and kept eating. He didn't defend himself. He didn't leave the table. He just said nothing. And the silence that followed was heavy. It spoke of boundaries. It said, "I heard what you said, and it no longer deserves my energy." That's when the son began to notice, not because his father yelled, but because he didn't, because silence, when rooted in self-respect, becomes a mirror. It shows people what their words actually sound like. And more often than not, they don't like what they see. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to correct every offense. Sometimes, your silence is enough to make them stop and think, even if they never admit it out loud. And here's the deeper truth. Silence protects your peace. You've earned that peace. You've walked through enough in this life to know the value of stillness. You've learned that not every moment requires a reaction. Not every hurt needs to be expressed to be healed. You can let them sit with their choices while you sit with your calm. That's not passive, that's powerful. Because there comes a point in your life, especially after 60, when you start valuing peace over closeness. When the cost of trying to explain yourself becomes too high. When you realize that if they haven't learned to treat you well by now, your words won't teach them, but your silence might. It's not about being cold. It's not about shutting them out completely. It's about no longer filling every gap with explanations. It's about letting them feel the weight of your absence when they've taken your presence for granted. It's about remembering that your value doesn't decrease just because someone else fails to see it. You are not here to plead for kindness. You are here to be kind to yourself, to hold your head high, even when they look right through you, to sit in your favorite chair, drink your tea, and feel the steadiness of your own company. Because the older you get, the clearer it becomes. Not everyone deserves access to your heart just because they share your name. And silence, beautiful, steady, self-assured silence, becomes the boundary that says, I'm done performing for love. I'm done begging to be seen. I'm not angry. I'm not bitter. I'm just done explaining. And let me tell you, there is nothing more powerful than that. It's a strange thing, isn't it? How much we've been taught that love must be loud, that to be heard, we must explain ourselves, justify our feelings, spell out our hurt so carefully that no one can deny it. But what happens when you do all that, and they still don't listen? You start to realize, maybe being quiet is not surrender. Maybe it's strength. Because sometimes, silence says what words cannot. It says, I've done enough talking. Now I'm just going to live. This was the shift Abigail discovered. At 68, she was the family glue. Holidays, she organized them. Birthdays, she remembered everyone's. When her son went through a divorce, she was there every day with food, with tissues, with open arms. But when she needed someone, just someone to sit with her after a health scare, no one showed up. Her calls went unanswered. Messages seen, but not replied to. And when she finally said something, her daughter shrugged and said, "You should have asked for help." That sentence rang in her ears for days. She had spent a lifetime giving without being asked. And yet, now when she needed the smallest gesture, she was told that it was her responsibility to speak up. She realized then that her voice had become too familiar, too easy to overlook. So she made a choice. The next time she was invited to dinner, she didn't go. She didn't make a scene. She didn't offer excuses. She simply replied, "I have other plans." Those plans were just a quiet evening at home with a book and a warm bath. But in that silence, something beautiful happened. She began to feel herself again. The noise of trying so hard to be needed had quieted, and in its place was something steady, something honest. A small whisper inside that said, "You don't have to do more to be worthy." When she didn't show up, they noticed, not right away, but over time, her absence began to speak. It said, "I'm not angry, but I'm no longer running on empty for people who only notice me when they're in need." And that silence, it carried more truth than all her carefully worded messages ever had. Because the thing is, when people are used to your constant giving, your stillness unsettles them. When they're used to you smoothing everything over, your boundaries confuse them. And when you begin to move differently, when you no longer jump at every call or show up to every gathering without question, they start to realize you're not just available. You're a person with your own inner life, with limits, with value. That's the power of silence. It reclaims the space where self-sacrifice once lived. Nathan, a quiet man in his early 70s, used to avoid conflict at all costs. His daughter would speak over him. His son would tease him in front of others, and he would smile through it, telling himself, "It's not worth it. They don't mean harm." But every time he stayed quiet out of fear, not strength, he felt himself shrinking until one day, at a family dinner, he simply got up and walked out. No words, no anger, just quiet exit. At first, they laughed, then they grew quiet, then they wondered, and that wondering, that pause, that's where reflection begins. He didn't call to explain. He didn't defend his choice. He just stopped engaging in conversations that drained him. Weeks later, his daughter asked to meet for coffee, not to argue, but to listen, because when you stop filling every silence, others are forced to sit with their own. And sometimes, that's exactly what they need. It's not about punishment. It's about presence. It's about creating the space for others to notice their own behavior, without your voice cushioning the discomfort. We all want to be heard. But the truth is, your silence can sometimes echo louder than your words, especially when it's the kind of silence that comes from a place of wholeness, not hurt, from calm, not coldness, from a soul that has finally decided to stop shouting across a canyon, hoping for someone on the other side to turn around. It's in this quiet, sacred space that your healing begins. You stop trying to fix the dynamic. You stop replaying the same conversations in your head, imagining different outcomes. You stop explaining to people who've already shown you they're not listening, and instead you breathe. You light a candle. You listen to music that stirs your spirit. You make yourself a beautiful meal. Even if you're eating alone, you choose, moment by moment, to value your own company. And that choice changes everything. Because eventually, the people who are meant to be in your life truly, meaningfully will start to treat your presence with the reverence it deserves. They'll call because they want to hear your voice, not because they need something. They'll show up with warmth, not expectation. And if they don't, you will still be okay, because your silence will have taught you something priceless. You are enough, even when no one else says so. You are worthy, even when the room grows quiet, and your peace is too valuable to spend proving a point. There's a shift that happens when you stop performing for love, when you stop saying, "Look at all I've done," and start asking, "What would I do if I stopped needing to be noticed?" It's a tender question, but a powerful one, because when your silence is rooted in self-worth, not resentment, it becomes magnetic. You begin to walk differently, slower, maybe, but with more intention. You speak less often, but with more meaning, and something changes not just in you, but in how others see you. Lucas, the father who once kept every Sunday open just in case his son dropped by, stopped doing that. He joined a photography group, went on long drives through the countryside. He began filling his calendar with things that didn't require anyone else's permission. He said, "I stopped leaving space for people who never showed up, and I started showing up for myself." That, right there, is what reclaiming your presence looks like. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's a quiet refusal to center your life around people who don't center you. And when you do that, something beautiful happens. The people who took you for granted start to notice your absence. They start to ask questions not because you ask them to, but because they sense the shift. You're no longer standing in the same place, waiting to be seen. You've moved, not physically, spiritually. You're tending to your own garden now. Madeline, who always let her children unload their frustrations on her without boundaries, began doing something different. When her daughter called, just to vent without asking if she was okay, without offering kindness, Madeline started saying, "Can we talk later? I'm resting right now." At first, her daughter didn't understand. She thought something was wrong. But in time, she started asking before launching into a rant. "Is this a good time? How are you, Mom?" Because the moment Madeline stopped absorbing everyone's chaos in silence, she created space for respect to grow. Your silence isn't a void. It's a boundary, and when it's held with grace, not punishment, it becomes an invitation. If you want my time, bring gentleness, bring presence, bring reciprocity. You no longer fill the silence with apologies. You don't rush to make others comfortable. You let the pause sit there until someone meets you with the same care you've always offered. This isn't about pride, it's about peace. You are not here to prove your patience by staying in conversations that hurt. You're not here to explain your worth after every careless remark. You're here to live the years ahead with the freedom you've earned. That freedom may not come with applause. It may not even be noticed right away, but it will change you, and that change is the reward. Abigail, who once made herself available every day for her daughter's unpredictable visits, began locking her door during her afternoon naps. She told her family, "From 2 to 4, that's my quiet time." It felt awkward at first, but that small act of self-protection turned into a larger pattern. She started taking art classes. She said no without guilt. She answered texts when it suited her, not out of pressure. And with each step, her silence grew stronger, not colder, but fuller. She wasn't disappearing. She was returning to herself, and in doing so, she taught her children a new rhythm, one where her time mattered, her rest mattered. Her presence wasn't assumed, it was earned. That's the unexpected gift of silence. It shifts the dynamic from imbalance to mutuality. It whispers, "I am not angry. I am not bitter. I'm just no longer playing the role of someone who will always be there, no matter how I'm treated." And when your children, or anyone else in your life, begin to feel that absence, not as punishment, but as clarity, that's when real change begins. Not always immediately, not always dramatically, but gradually. They lean in more, they listen better, they show up, not to fix the silence, but to be part of your world again on your terms, because your silence has taught them what your words could not. That your love is generous, but it is no longer endless. That you are available, but not at the cost of yourself. That your heart is open, but no longer wide enough to let disrespect slip through unspoken. And if they never change, you still have yourself, your mornings, your routines, your rituals, your stillness. You've built something strong from the quiet, something steady, something sacred. You don't have to say a word to be heard. You don't have to raise your voice to take up space. You don't have to explain your distance to justify your peace. Because at this stage of life, after all you've been through, you've earned the right to be the keeper of your own energy, to spend it where it's returned, to give it where it grows, to hold your silence not as a weapon, but as a form of self-respect so deep. It no longer asks for validation. You are here now, awake, aware, becoming, and that, my dear friend, is the most powerful thing of all. If you're still here with me now, sitting quietly with these thoughts and letting them settle in your heart, thank you. Thank you for honoring your own time. Thank you for listening, not just to me, but to yourself. This space we've created together isn't just about silence. It's about dignity. It's about returning home to the parts of yourself that may have felt forgotten, dismissed, or worn thin from years of giving without pause. There's a reason this message found you today. Maybe your children have pulled away, or maybe they've simply grown used to your presence without appreciating it. Maybe you've spent years softening your voice, minimizing your needs, putting yourself second or third, or last just to keep the peace. And now, maybe you're tired. Not from age, but from always having to prove that your love still matters. You don't need to prove it anymore. You've loved well. You've shown up. You've given pieces of your soul in ways no one else has seen. You don't need to raise your voice now. You need only to rise in your stillness. Your silence is not emptiness. It is your soul setting down the noise and choosing peace over performance. And in that peace, you begin to remember, I am still someone, even when no one is looking. I am still worthy, even when no one says thank you. I am still powerful, even when I say nothing at all. So if your story resonates with what we've shared here, I want to invite you gently, sincerely to share your heart with us. Has your relationship with your adult children changed over time? Have you ever found strength in silence? What helped you rediscover your sense of peace? If you feel comfortable, I'd love for you to share your story in the comments below, because sometimes your experience is the very thing another soul needs to hear. Your words could light a path for someone else who's still trying to find their voice or reclaim their silence. And if this message brought you even a small sense of calm, if it made you feel a little more seen, a little more steady, then I hope we can stay connected. You are not alone in this. There are many of us walking softly, standing tall in our truth, finding the beauty in a quieter life. You are part of that circle now. So if this spoke to your heart, I'd be honored if you clicked subscribe, not for numbers, not for show, but because you belong in a space where your voice and your silence are both respected, where your story matters, where your presence is enough. You've given so much, for so long. Now it's your turn to receive, to rest, to smile without asking permission, to say, I've done enough, I am enough, and I'm still becoming. The world may grow loud around you. People may continue their patterns, but within you, there is a place that stays still, that holds grace, that holds wisdom, that no one can take from you. Let that be your resting place now. You don't need to fight to be heard. You only need to live as though you already are. So tonight, when the house is quiet and the phone doesn't ring, light a candle anyway, play music you love, cook something simple just for you. Wrap yourself in a warm blanket and know you are not forgotten. You are not invisible. You are the beating heart of your own life. And in your silence, they will remember, and in your silence, you will rise, always.